What is up, Bills Mafia? I don't want to take this long of a break again from you. I know it's the off season. We're going to get into kind of the dog days of summer, but it's been a long week. But we are back with back-to-back episodes of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. He is Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. Tonight we are talking schedule. Tomorrow is Bills rookie minicamp. We will, of course, have our live observation shows shortly after practice times ends and we get a chance to go into the locker room and talk to some of the players. If that's the case, there might be just player availability. However that ends up working out, you will get a show from us tomorrow as well. A lot to talk about, Ryan. The schedule is out. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I am doing great. You're right. I mean, a lot of schedule leaks throughout the day, but now it's officially out. A lot to kind of dig into when it comes to the schedule.
Yeah, and it's like the schedule, the big schedule leak that was out there, I feel like was pretty accurate, to be honest with you. I mean, I saw that probably sometime around, I want to say 2:00. I had it sent to me in DMs, and then I saw it start to percolate around on different Twitter accounts, and it ends up getting pretty much locked in here, and we're gonna go through bits and pieces of it, and I guess you've put together that leak story, and then you had the story because I was at a little bit of a baseball game a little while ago. Where do you want to start with all this?
Well, the primetime games, the fact that they still view the Bills as one of the powerhouses of the AFC.
Yeah, and I don't think this was a surprise. I think going into the schedule, the expectation was the Bills are still going to be one of those primetime darlings. Now, what happened though, Ryan, and I think this was easy to predict, the arrival of Aaron Rodgers in the division and onto a team like the Jets. The Green Bay Packers are still getting quite a bit of primetime games given the fact that he left there. But now you're adding the Jets into that mix. And I didn't see what the final number was. I think it was somewhere around was it 6, 7?
Games that I saw there, off with that's
all right, so we're losing Ryan. We were having some issues with Ryan before the show. That's why what took us a few minutes having some internet issues. So we'll try to get him worked out here. We'll bring in the producer. Producer Anthony is just chilling. We'll wait for Ryan to get back in the mix. What's up, buddy? How are you?
What's going on? Jet schedule. I know it's Bill's show, but
that's okay. The people at home know about your affinity for the New York Jets. Yeah. And that's okay. You're an intern. You're a producer. Yeah, you don't have to like the Bills. And guess what? We're not Bills fans either, which I know a lot of people struggle with that, but it is what it is. So yeah, I think that dynamic, just to start off with, though, is an interesting one. It's like the Jets are now the it team. Like not only of the AFC, I mean the Super Bowl, or like there's Super Bowl buzz around them. So does it feel different as a Jets fan, like going into this season with now the expectations kind of a little bit higher?
I already get killed in the comments. Yeah, it's
good for you. You got to deal with a little bit of hostility. It really brings you into the business.
It does. CB in the comments, that's like ranch on wings gross. Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying because I could easily see them, this could be a whole Brett Favre season. I feel like where they start off good, then Rodgers gets hurt, or it's, it just gets derailed. It's scary to have them, see them have expectations. I mean, I'm excited. I think the Bills game on 9/11, there's going to be, tons of hype around that. They're going to have the primetime slot. I'm curious, how they come out. I'm not going to pretend like I know what the Jets are going to be next season, really. Even like offensively, I think there's still a lot of, things to look at with them. But I mean, it's a scary time. I'm excited because I've never, been able to like say, hey, like we could actually, make a deep run of the playoffs in a while. But I don't know. I'm pretty nervous, but at the same time, it's exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's like an exciting time to be a fan of a team in the AFC East as long as you're not living in Massachusetts. So that's kind of fun for everybody in the division, right? Bills fans, Dolphins fans, Jets fans. I mean, really, all three of those teams, not only are they kind of in the conversation for, playoffs, divisional title, maybe even like Super Bowl contention, right? Like depending on how things materialize in New York or New Jersey. I'm sorry. And then with Tua, if he could stay healthy, obviously they have a lot of weapons there. I want to talk about this with you here while we continue to wait for Ryan to try to get back in here. So the schedule comes out yesterday. Bills versus Jets was announced, and obviously like talking heads have been just crushing this storyline for the past 24 hours, right? With only a few games to talk about, this kind of vaulted up to the top of the list because this is a measurement game, right? Like right out of the gates. It's tough for the Jets, who are going to be building this whole new team identity, trying to get together and figure things out and go face a team in the Bills that have been a Super Bowl contender the last couple of years. I mean, this is an it kind of game. So there's a tweet from, let me bring it up here. I'm not seeing it now. Oh yeah, it was from Brian Costello. And he covers the Jets in New York. And he said that if you go back to 2022 and you put together all of the ticket sales for all the games on the day of the schedule release, so all 8 or 9, however many it was, home games last season, that falls short of how many tickets were sold just for Bills Jets in the opener coming up here in a couple months. I mean, that's how much excitement there is around the Jets, but also this potential matchup and this potential budding rivalry that kind of started last year because the Jets played the Bills so competitively, more so than anybody really even thought. I mean, even during the Sam Darnold era, I thought that they played him pretty well. I thought defensively they had some, they made things hard on Josh Allen. There was that one middle year there where I think the Bills had their way a little bit. But last year, I mean, we saw this starting, and now it's potentially going to be a real fun 2023.
And that's what you want in, divisional football. You know what I mean? I think this is the best the AFC East has been in. I mean, I don't know how long, since like the 80s or something. Like you'd have to go way back, but like this is the best the division has been in forever. So it's exciting that like the Bills, and Jets can be an actual, rivalry. I mean, I know they had like the fun little when Rex Ryan jumped over to Buffalo. That was a little fun era of the rivalry. But like besides that, if you really had like a competitive, tense rivalry with these teams, recently it's been the Bills kind of pounding on them, and recently the Jets have kind of sprung up the last year, which is exciting. But I mean, it's really good when you have a division like the AFC East, which is going to be so competitive, and even the Patriots could make it. You never know. So I mean, it's great when the division is competitive. And you could see, actual rivalries, for the first time in a while, especially, between the Bills and the Jets.
Great stuff from Anthony. We're gonna tag our boy Ryan back in here. Great stuff from Anthony. Pinching in here. Are you all right? Is the internet out in Olean going to survive here?
I hope so. It seems like these late night ones are where they get a little tricky at times after the 9 o'clock hour, which you think it would be a little bit faster then, but for whatever reason, people in Olean must be using up that bandwidth.
I understand. It's okay. So one of the big storylines, I mean, you mentioned the primetime games. We talked a little bit about that. Let's shift over to these 1 p.m. games because there's not a lot of them. It's 5. You tweeted it out. It's a tough one to eat for a lot of. Well, first of all, historically, there's been so many, the Bills haven't been a team that has gotten a lot of those primetime games. And before this, the change in the TV structure, 425 was just not a common place for them. So they played mostly at 1 o'clock. Now, I want to offer another side to this take. And I know there's a lot of people that are like, give me all the 1 o'clock games. And I'm not sitting here saying that I don't love them. I do, especially from a work perspective. Get done with the night around 8, 9 o'clock. Now that podcast after the game, and we're off to the races. 4 o'clock definitely pushes me up against midnight and beyond. But if I'm a fan, right, I kind of like the 4:30 experience, right? Like wake up, you don't have to get up super early, grab some breakfast maybe before you head down to the tailgate, mosey down at around noon, 1 o'clock, start playing some bags, putting some back, and before you know it, you just stroll on in at about 4:30. What's wrong with that?
You're giving some Bills fans extra time to tailgate. You just answered your own question, Matt Parrino. I
Listen,
think that
I'm trying to provide them some fun, okay? I'm sorry.
No, the 425, 430 games, they're okay. They're what they are. But, there's something about the wait. You have the 1 p.m. games kick off, and all of a sudden you're sitting there like you get antsy. You're kind of waiting for that game at that point, and the day just kind of drags, and then it goes right into that Sunday night block, the Sunday night game. That makes it difficult.
For sure. I think that the way this thing is structured, it's tough. There's 3 home 1 o'clock games, 2 away 1 o'clock games, and then you're just looking at a lot of 4:30, especially in that back half of the schedule with a couple night games sprinkled in. The Miami game is one of those flex games where it's January 6th or 7th on the schedule, week 18. Plenty of playoff and probably divisional implications on the line. What's interesting, though, is like the Jets games are going to be done by that final stretch. I mean, they play on Sunday, November 19th. So before Thanksgiving, the Jets go to Buffalo, and those 2 Jets games will be done. So it's really going to probably be, depending on how good of a season the Jets have, that Miami game could be pivotal towards the division coming down the stretch in the final week, which I think is probably why the NFL wanted to put it there. But listen, selfishly too, somebody that goes to all these games, kidding me? Miami in January, LA in December. This is what Jordan Poyer has coined the phrase after games: big dubs. This is absolutely a win for Bills media. Sorry.
Yeah,
there's a little selfishness there.
Absolutely. It's nice that you're going to head there at the end of the season. Going back to the Jets part of it's interesting. You almost wonder if the schedule makers think that Miami is the bigger threat to Buffalo on the AFC this year. And I guess it's not how it works with every division, but you have the Bills facing them in the final week. You almost think, okay, maybe they think these are the 2 teams that are going to be vying for that number 1 spot in the AFC East, vying for maybe the number 1 seed in the AFC. So it's possible. Obviously, the Dolphins were one of the hottest teams in the league last year. The Jets have still a lot to prove, even though they have Aaron Rodgers now. It is very interesting, though, that like you said, after week 11, the Bills are done with the Jets, and obviously they'll have the Patriots in week 17 before they play the Dolphins week 18.
Couple of notes on the Jets schedule real quick. You mentioned in them and like what this is going to look like. They have a really tough stretch. That first of all, their bye week is week 4. So that's horrible. Like terrible. Let me just double. Oh, no, week 7. I'm sorry. It goes. Oh, they did their schedule super funny. Their social media team. They did 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 instead of all the way down and then all the way down. I don't like that. So week 7. Yeah, New Jersey, terrible. So it goes Bills, Cowboys, Patriots, Chiefs, Broncos, Eagles, bye week. So I mean, listen, on the road at Dallas, you figure that's going to be a tough game, right? And then you throw in the Bills, the Chiefs, and the defending NFC champions and the defending Super Bowl champions in your first 6 games. There's a scenario that the Jets could play out there that they're 2-4 and they're up against it after the bye. Pressure's on. And what's funny is I think that pairs nicely if you're a Bills fan with their schedule, which is, I think early on, it's not too daunting. At the Jets, home against the Raiders, at Washington, then Miami, Jacksonville, and London, the Giants, tough, but then New England and Tampa Bay. And then you get 10 days to prepare for Cincy and what's going to be arguably the biggest game of the year. I mean, that's, to me, I think that's bigger than KC. We've played that story before. This is a team that just came into Buffalo and smacked the Bills around. That is going to be a massive game. And if Bills go into that thing 7-1, 6-2, and the Jets are like, fumbling the bag a little bit, very, very interesting, high drama in the AFC East.
Yeah, you know that there's a lot of expectations for the Jets, but if they don't come out hot, it's going to get bad with that New York media pretty quickly. They gave up a fair amount here to get Aaron Rodgers, obviously swapping picks in the first round, which cost them an offensive tackle. They lost a first round next year, most likely based on the snaps, second round. So they're expecting this to be a major success, Matt. They're expecting a Super Bowl or bust essentially with Rodgers in this next year or two. And if they get off to a rough start, like I said, with that New York media and New York City media, it could get ugly nationally very quickly.
So the one Thursday night game, interestingly enough, is Tampa Bay And I think like if you want to talk about a game where you're going to be on a short week, I think you really like that spot because you have the London game in week 5 sandwiched between a couple of home games, tough home games. First game against the Dolphins, obviously the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. That is going to be massive. Sean McDermott versus Brian Dable. That sneaky to me is one of the, if not the top games on the schedule. People are going to be talking about that all week long. Like the first time that Dable, who ran the Bills offense, depending on how the Bills are doing going into that game offensively, like questions about Ken Dorsey that have kind of persisted all off season long. That's kind of in the mix there. And then there's even been some of the crazy takers out there that have like, get rid of Sean McDermott. You should have just made Brian Dable the head coach, which is not really how it works. And oh, by the way, Sean McDermott's gone to 5 playoffs in 6 years after a 17-year playoff drought. Listen, we could all criticize things about Sean McDermott, but I definitely think this is a very healthy organization, culture, all of the above that he's kind of set over the last couple of years. And there's questions that need to be answered. There's hurdles that need to be surpassed for Sean McDermott as a head coach in the playoffs and the regular season, all those things. But it's been a very successful 6 years of this regime, and I think that stuff is a little bit nonsense. But man, if the Giants come into Buffalo and smack the Bills around, can you imagine the talk shows that next week, the radio shows, the WGR callers? It's going to be a wild time. Wild scene.
It would be. And listen, Brian Dable did a great job in his first season with the Giants, leading them to the playoffs. I'm still not a believer in Danny Dimes, as they call him there. I think that's still an advantageous matchup for the Bills for that reason alone. But Dable knows this team. He knows the weaknesses of this defense by practicing against them day in, day out for years. So he's going to have a good game plan. He's going to have a good plan of attack. And the one interesting thing, though, is this is, Sean McDermott calling the plays. Is he going to be more aggressive? That's kind of been the national talk all offseason since Leslie Frazier stepped away for the year. Is McDermott's going to be more aggressive with this thing? And I kind of want to see what that looks like. But it's going to be a good butting of the heads, so to speak, between two guys that have a lot of mutual respect. But that Thursday night game, real quick, I like that a lot for the Bills in terms of coming off of the short week. Tampa Bay still has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, but Baker Mayfield is obviously going through it in terms of where he's been, where he's going around this league. This is a team that has a lot of quarterback questions in the Buccaneers, and it seems to be in a good spot for the Bills, like you said. Gives them some extra rest after that week for that Cincinnati Bengals game. So the placement, the opponent, the way the early schedule's built, the Bills are going to have a chance to build up some momentum as long as they're playing the way that they were last year, obviously, on the, offensively, maybe just a little more consistent there. They put up a lot of points. They were good statistically. They just had trouble stringing together 4 quarters of solid play week in, week out. Year 2 in Ken Dorsey's offense, I'm expecting to see more complete games, so to speak, where 4 quarters of strong play for Josh Allen and company. And defensively, they lost Tremaine Edmonds, but they really didn't lose much else, Matt, on that side of the ball. So expectations should still be through the roof for this team.
12 games before the bye week. So you probably like that bye week, and even Josh Allen said it on Kyle Brandt this week, like more towards like week 9 or 10. But I think getting it at 12 is still a win as opposed to getting it in like 6, 7, or 8, like too early. Yeah. And it's getting it on that back end. It's depending on where things stand, whether it be in the division or health wise. I mean, that puts them at a really good spot to then go into a really tough stretch at Kansas City versus Dallas and at LA. In 3 what could be real critical games, especially in the AFC. I mean, 2 AFC games there that are against teams that are probably going to be in the mix in terms of playoff seeding. So you rest up, you get to go on the road, play Philadelphia in week 11, get 2 weeks off. And here's another piece of this, Ryan. The 2 biggest games on the schedule, the 2 toughest and maybe the 2 most important, right? The defending Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, the team that just ended your season last year, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bills get a long stretch to prepare for both. 2 weeks to prepare for Kansas City, 10 days to prepare for Cincinnati. That's massive.
It's huge. It's, especially against Cincinnati, in my opinion. That's a team that the Bills really couldn't figure out in the playoff game last year, and obviously we know the regular season game. They didn't make it through the first quarter, but the Chiefs, that's still a tough team. That's still a team that's going to give the Bills a major challenge. I feel like the Bills, though, in terms of their players, have a good grasp on what Patrick Mahomes and company are trying to do. And both of those teams know each other so well. But yeah, for the Bills and the Bengals this year, it's a big year for Buffalo to show, okay, last year, the Bengals stomped us in the playoffs. We're going to come out here and we're going to show that we're just as good as this team. A lot of people now are looking at the Bills as like the number 3 team, and there's a big gap between 1 and 2 with the Chiefs and the Bengals there. So it's a statement game for the Bills there. The Chiefs, though, they've gone back and forth. Obviously, the Bills have won some regular season games over Kansas City as of late, but having extra time to prepare for Patrick Mahomes and company late in the season, that's huge. And just a Week 13 bye in general is huge for this team. They're getting a little bit older on this roster overall. To have that break late in the season, let them get that breather before the home stretch of the regular season, and anticipated playoff berth is going to be big for this team.
Question in here from a regular, Cole McGarvey, over on YouTube. Who do you guys think Von Miller is going to return against? And I think that's a good question. And it's funny. You look at the start of this season at the Jets, right? I'm sure Sean McDermott, Von Miller, Brandon Beane would all love him to be there for that Monday night game against the Jets. But if he's not ready, I think you have some time there, right? Like those first couple of weeks, Las Vegas, Jimmy G, they're still kind of going to be piecing things together. The Jets as well, even though that they have a lot of talent on that offense, and they're bringing in a Hall of Fame quarterback. There might be a little bit of the kinks that have to be worked out. And then Washington. What's funny about Washington, Ryan? We could joke about Sam Howell, maybe Jake Fromm is on that team as well, but Jacoby Brissett, they went out and signed him. Don't forget, he played the Bills really tough last season in Cleveland.
Yes,
that could be a guy that goes in and plays and maybe presents some problems. And maybe if you're in a situation where Von's not back yet, I think if I'm Brandon Beane and I'm looking at the schedule, my tentative, shoot for like date is that Week 4 game against Miami, hoping to have Von Miller back before that.
Yeah, I think they would love that. And Von Miller's saying all the right things in terms of, he's planning to be ready for Week 1, but he's an older player. He's a vet. It's not as easy to come back real quick on that Week 3 game. I think maybe getting Washington in Week 3 is going to be good for Buffalo because they're not going to want to go away from Sam Howell too soon. They've come out and said, this is going to be our guy. Where if it was mid-season and they're floundering, that would be the time they could change over to Brissett. But when it comes to Von Miller, I'm going to circle Week 6 against the Giants. He doesn't go overseas. He doesn't play in the Jacksonville game. But he's ready for that primetime game at home against the Giants. Big time atmosphere. That's where I'm going to circle it in. But he's saying all the right things about being ready early, but you just never know. We're not doctors. We're not experts. There were times, though, at training camp where we saw Trey White doing things last year that we thought looked pretty optimistic. And we know, obviously he didn't come back until Thanksgiving last year. So we don't know where he is in the rehab process. It's encouraging to see him doing a lot of lower body exercises with these heavy weights, but that's not the same as what he needs to do on the football field. So it's a wait and see. But if you can get him back in that first, half of the season, that's huge for Buffalo.
Versus Indianapolis, at Pittsburgh, and at Chicago is the preseason schedule to get the Bills ready to go. Some good teams there.
Penny wants to know the preseason schedule. That's a
Penny's invested. Penny's invested, and maybe hasn't seen a screenshot yet. And what's interesting about those games is like Chicago obviously has some young talent. Pittsburgh with a young quarterback. Indianapolis, that could be a fun time to get a chance to see Anthony Richardson in Buffalo. So that's going to be super cool. Did Indy played in Buffalo last year or in Indy? I can't remember that for the preseason because that was the third preseason game. I think it was in Buffalo.
It was, yeah, because I think that's the one I was in Arizona for, and I was watching at like 9 something in the morning.
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting too about the preseason this year, Matt, is there's not the 2 cut downs; it's just the 1 now. right?
Right,
So
right, right.
you're going to see a lot of guys that are getting extra opportunities. You're not going to see probably the starters out there very long. Not that they played extended stretches in the preseason, but sometimes I think some of the starters had to play a little bit more in that last game because you cut guys down in that first round, or maybe your top backups played more. You're going to have a lot of competition going into that final preseason game. So in terms of a roster perspective, those final few spots on the 53-man roster, the preseason is going to be exciting this year.
Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Thursday evening. We're talking Bills schedule. We'll take a peek here in a minute at the Miami Dolphins schedule as well. I wanted to get a look at that. I've not looked at it, so I'll look at it live with all of you, and we'll react to it. Get out your calendars. You could do it on your cell phone. You could do it on an actual in-person calendar. Like, I don't know about you, Ryan. My wife still uses the calendar where she marks all this stuff up. She's got a paper one, and she had like a flip paper one, and she's
Yeah.
got a dry erase one, and they're both always just filled to the nines. She's so organized and keeps our life on track. Without her, I don't know what I would do. Which, by the way, sidetrack here. I bought some for it's our 13th anniversary this year. Obviously, the Bills are playing the New York Jets week 1. Got her some Billy Joel tickets.
Oh,
Earned
I
some big
saw
brownie
that.
points.
Yeah.
Bucket list item in at MSG. The Piano Man live in person. Man, it is awesome. I can't wait for that. That's just a little sidetrack because we're super excited about it. But get out your calendars, whatever you use, and mark down May 20th. We're going back to Wingnuts live in person. Ryan will be out. I will be out. We'll be talking Bills. We'll be right snap in the middle of OTA, so we'll do a podcast on that. We'll spend some time eating some wings, drinking some beers, talking some Bills. It's a great time. There's a link in the description of this episode, whether you're watching on video, on YouTube, or in the audio versions. It sends you to the RSVP page over on Facebook. Just hit interested or going, or if you're ready to go for May 20th, hit going. If you're on the fence and you're going to wait and see how the next week and a half plays out, hit interested, and you'll get a reminder as it comes closer. Because I feel like sometimes we want to go to things. Like, this happens to me all the time. I don't know about you, Ryan. It's like I want to go something, and I just I'm going to go to that in 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks later, I'm like, I totally forgot about it. So this is a nice way to just kind of keep it on your radar.
Yeah, you can forget about things really easily, or slips your mind. So having that on there is nice because, like you said, you get the reminders. The events coming up early that day. You get a nice little pop up there on Facebook. But yeah, Joel, big fan of the whiteboard calendar. So we have that marked down for May 20th. We are very excited about Wingnuts.
Also, some other big news: Ryan Talbot and Matt Parrino live over the pond in London, the week of October 8th, taking shout on the road. So for our UK audience or anybody going over for the game, we're working on some big plans for that week. You'd better believe Ryan and I will be there, and we are going to be out with Bills Mafia, doing what we do, man. Going out, eating good food, drinking good drinks, and talking Bills. And we're going to do it in a big way. So I'm super excited about that. Now with those announcements out of the way, let's get into Matt Ariza. I've seen a couple of comments on this in the chat. We could touch on this a little bit. I was off earlier in the week. I saw a lot of things in my mentions. I was off Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday when the big report came out. And I've seen a lot of funny comments directed towards, I think it's directed towards Buffalo media in general. But I went back and listened to our podcast that we did during that time. And I was very clear with the situation. The stuff the allegations that were made were troubling. But we made sure to say that they were just allegations. And that's really important when you're talking about something where we don't know the full details. You just got to be careful with, how far you're willing to dive into it. I don't think anybody was super comfortable with anything happening around that story. And the end of it that we were kind of talking about was the Bills' end of it. Okay, when did they find out about it? Why didn't they find out about it sooner? If it was, I think it was in June or July when they found out. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look now. There's a report that came out this week that that Matt Ariza is not going to face criminal charges stemming from the incident. There are multiple witness reports, not even placing him at the scene of the gang rape when it happened. He apparently had reportedly left an hour earlier. So he came out with a statement. It seems like things are trending in a good direction for him. And people keep asking me, like, okay, what's going to happen with him? Again, we talked about this before the show, Ryan. We've never even heard from Matt Ariza yet. Like, he's never sat and talked about any of this in any kind of setting. So it makes me uncomfortable diving too far into the details, just not knowing enough about the whole situation, right? But people ask me, you think he's going to get another shot? Wouldn't doubt it. I think that he's somebody that was on NFL teams' radar before. And if they get to the other side of this thing, there's no criminal charges. I don't see why he wouldn't be probably back in the NFL and some team looking to fill a punter hole. I could see that happening.
Yeah, it could happen. I still think teams are in wait and see mode, waiting to see what, if, obviously very encouraging news on his side of things in terms of not being there, being gone an hour earlier. But teams aren't going to rush to sign a punter. As talented as he is, as big of a leg as he has, being able to flip the field, they're going to be patient with this thing. And like you said, when we went back and looked at that episode, because you're right, mentions were like, hey, are you going, what are you going to say about this? We mentioned that the Bills said there were facts that they didn't know about. They were in a tough spot, and this was going to be something that was going to kind of hang over them throughout the season until they made a decision. Obviously, they made that decision shortly thereafter to part ways with Matt. Brandon Beane said at the time he thought it was best for the team, best for Matt himself, and that Ariza agreed with that. We're just getting this news this week, so the whole 2022 season played out, and some fans are like, oh yeah, it should have stayed on the team. No, that would have been cast over the team the entire year last year. If he comes out the other side of this, like you said, and some team could come calling, even if it's not this year with the NFL. We've seen like these spring leagues, the XFLs, a lot of players getting these workouts. Maybe that's where he starts out and he shows he's clearly an NFL talent, and then he'll have some teams calling him. I don't know the timeline for it, but yes, based on the news this week, it wouldn't surprise me if he was back in the NFL in the near future.
Yeah, and one point I made is the last point I'll make on this. And as this story progresses, we'll talk about it more. Like, Ryan and I were never running away from talking about this at all. I was off earlier this week. Otherwise, we would have had a show at some point and we would have talked about it then. Good for Matt Ariza. If this ends up being a situation where, he was telling the truth and he wasn't involved in this whole situation, you hate to see that. Like, somebody get kind of dragged into something. But again, I don't even want to go too far down that road because we just don't have enough information yet. But on to your point, which is a really good one from a Bills perspective, they landed in a really good situation out of a bad one, right? Like, that was just a bad situation for all parties involved, with the national, international media attention that was coming from it, and having spent a 5th round draft pick on a guy that now you're contemplating cutting. There was no really good way to get out of that situation. And landing on Sam Martin in the aftermath on that, having him come in, an experienced veteran guy that's been really good in this league, have a really good season, prove that he could punt in the elements in Buffalo, and then you extend him with a 3-year deal. I think the Bills got a good punter. And again, you have Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. One of the lowest priority talking points for me is who's lining up at punter. Go find one, tell him to go kick the ball, and go score more points than the other team. I mean, maybe that's a little old school. Maybe that's a little too flippant about special teams. I think I've worked in my special teams takes a little bit on the sly over the years here on the show, but no offense to all special teams apologists and gurus out there. But I think like a fresh start for Ariza in the NFL, it's not out of the realm of possibility from my end.
Oh, lost you there for a minute.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Gary
you're
V
okay.
out in Atlanta.
Yeah.
What's up, buddy?
Remember, that's well said, Matt. Yeah, I remember the impression, Gary.
Ryan,
remember it well. No, but Sam Martin, real quick, the Bills found a solid punter. They found almost important to them for a punter is someone that can hold the ball as well for their kicker. He had a great rapport with Tyler Bass last year in that regard too. So they're in a good spot right now. They landed in a good spot. They have that at least short-term solution, but with Ariza, there are a lot of teams in this league that aren't in a great spot with the punter position. So it might be like mid-season he gets a call, and maybe he is back here in 2023.
And Sir Nathan, who I've always seen his comments in here. So when people are in the show and always talking in the show, I tend to see them. Thank you for mentioning this. You guys don't dodge any news. We're never dodging anything. We're talking about anything that happens. I like to think in a responsible and professional way. And listen, if I ever said anything about Matt Ariza, and what happened there, that veered from that, I don't think that I did. But listen, I don't have all of my commentary on hand. It's an emotional time, right? Like, you think about people that being in that situation and being, taken advantage of potentially or allegedly. And, it's an emotional thing. And I think it's important to remember that. And I think more than anything in this day and age, because social media is so available, like sometimes it's good, no matter what side of an argument or a debate that you're on, sometimes it's good to just pump the brakes a little bit and just think about some things before you're just so quick to just start typing stuff out in general. I think a lot of people could be helped out about that. Not even football or this situation pertaining to that. I mean, it goes for other things as well. But let's get back to the schedule, Ryan, because I did want to touch on that. We did. What's another big takeaway that you have from this slate? Where could things maybe this is a good transition. Where could maybe you see things maybe going off the rails for the Bills if that were to be the case? Maybe a stretch that worries you.
Well, it would be post-bye week, because you would think coming off of the bye, you would be fresh. You'd be the home stretch of the season. We talked about how we like the beginning part of the year, but this could be a stumbling block. And I don't want to liken it to what happened to the Dolphins last year, but the Dolphins hit that patch where they just couldn't win a game. And going into the final game of the season, they were, backed into the playoffs essentially and found a way to get in, but it wasn't pretty. And I'm not saying that'll be Buffalo, but post-bye, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers. I mean, playoff team. And then Patriots, I don't have high expectations for the Patriots this year, but they play the Bills tough still. They played them tough late in the regular season last year. That was a 35-23 game, I believe, toward the end of the season. And then the Dolphins, that's a team that wants to prove that they are a legitimate contender, not just in the AFC East, but the AFC as a whole. And you're finishing the year with them. So it's a tough stretch post-bye. And if there was a time where the Bills could stumble, I guess that would be it.
Your point on the Patriots, I think, is really important, because what worries you about the Patriots is that they find any type of consistency at the quarterback position to just be average, right? And I don't know if anybody there on the roster right now is capable of providing that, but it's early. And listen, I think there's a lot of players like, Trey Lance, Malik Willis, guys that could be on the trade block early on this season. If Mac Jones doesn't look good early on and they're not 100% sold on Bailey Zappi, I think they could for sure make a deal for a quarterback and maybe get them into their program. Tannehill, there's another guy. I mean, I could see Belichick being. Here's what I really like about the Patriots and why I'm not completely writing them off in this division. Look at their front on the defensive side. Matthew Judon is an obvious beast. Devin Godchow, Christian Barmore, really elite guys in the middle. They have Lawrence Guy, Dietrich Wise as well, who could play multiple positions. They go out and they draft Keon White. Everybody made a big joke about him looking like he was so mad about going to the Patriots. It's come out since then that he was pissed that all those teams passed on him. So now you have a super motivated pass rusher coming in, potentially adding to the mix. And don't forget about the fact that sneaky Josh Uche came on last year. He looked like a guy now. And then they go out and they get this dude, Marte Mapu, who, a lot of draft guys are just absolutely fawning over, like a utility guy, like an explosive player that Belichick can kind of play chess with back there. I love Kyle Duggar. They went out and they got maybe arguably the top cornerback in the draft in Christian Gonzalez. Ryan, I don't want to be hyperbolic or overreactive. The Bill Belichick defense could be back.
It could. They have some talent. I'm a big Mapu fan myself there. I think he tore his pec in February, and people thought he was going to fall a little bit further than he did, but I like where the Patriots got him. I think that's a sneaky addition. I've talked about Gonzalez being a great addition at cornerback, so they have the pieces there. Can you be capable? Can you be a capable offense? Maybe you don't even have to be above average at quarterback. Maybe you lean on the running game. Stevenson's been very good as one of their lead backs there, and they always have a deep bullpen, so to speak, of other options. You used to have Damian Harris, obviously, now in Buffalo, but Stevenson's a great back too. And if you play great defense and you can kind of lean on the run game, they can grind out some low scoring games and wins and hang around in that AFC East late in the year.
If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for hanging out with us on an unusual Thursday night. Hit that like button, subscribe to the show as well. Let's take a run quickly through the Miami Dolphins schedule, because let's see if the Miami Dolphins social media team got it right, or if they just completely messed this up. Because, and also with these teams doing this kind of annoying let's react to every game on the schedule with a GIF or something. I don't know. It's kind of annoying, but whatever. I'm that old man like in the corner just complaining. All right, Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Bills, Giants to open the season for the Miami Dolphins. That is, let's see here. What's home or so on the road to open the first 2 weeks. Home against the Broncos. That's a good game for them. I mean, I figure they win. On the road against the Bills, then then home against the Giants, home against the Panthers. So not super tough to start off, but then it starts getting a little bit more challenging, right? Like the 3 games before the bye, week 10 bye, they got the perfect bye. At the Eagles, home to the Pats, and then at Kansas City. That is a really tough stretch that if they lose 2 of those first 6, and then you got that 3-game gauntlet. And I know the Patriots aren't necessarily a gauntlet, but again, if that defense is tough, they traditionally play. Actually, they traditionally play Miami horrible down in Miami, but things will be cooling off by then. So we'll see. I'm trying to give Bills fans some hope, but not a overwhelming schedule at all. On the back end, Raiders, Jets, Commanders, Titans, Jets, Cowboys, Ravens, Bills. So, I mean, there's some tough games in there, but it's not overwhelming. I think that's the easiest of the big 3. If you looked at the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins, I'd say the Miami's is probably the easiest.
Yeah, it might be. And, you mentioned the Chargers early on in that schedule. And last year, the Chargers faced them. They were missing some key players on Los Angeles, and they went in and they beat Miami. So that'll kind of be a revenge game for Miami, I'm sure, in terms of the way things went for them down the home stretch. I agree with you. Denver isn't a Chiefs level opponent, Eagles level, Bills level opponent. I think they're going to be a lot better this year. Last year they were awful. They were just awful to watch. I do think that they're going to be much the coaching, obviously, under Sean Payton's going to be a lot better. I do believe that they have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They have some pieces on defense. So I think they're going to be more competitive. So that could be a better game than you think. But in terms of the way it starts out, yeah, I think that might be the least daunting of the 3.
Thank you so much to everybody for watching tonight. I know we're a little bit out of the schedule. It tends to happen. We are going to have a guest next week, Ryan. I'm really excited. I'll keep it a little bit ominous. I'm really excited. Somebody that was talking a lot about the Bills after the season, put a lot of stuff out on social media. And we're going to bring them on and have kind of look back at some of the immediate postseason takes on what went wrong for the Bills and how the Bills have addressed the roster and what that's meant for this person in terms of the upside for 2023. It's going to be a really fun conversation, I think. So we'll get to that next week. We've gone about 45 minutes here. We got the full schedule. We talked about the Dolphins, talked about the Jets. We're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about Bills rookie minicamp. Our first look at Dalton Kincaid. Josh Allen was talking a little bit about him this week on the Kyle Brandt podcast. Hasn't met him yet, but I'm sure he's kind of raring to go to get to work with him during OTAs here coming over the next couple of weeks. May 20th. We are 10 days away, Ryan, from Shout back at Wingnuts. And producer Anthony is in the comments just absolutely losing his mind because he can't wait to come out and produce Shout from Wingnuts. I saw you down there. You were like, you were tooting the horn.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, you're ready to go. So
it's always a good time. It's always a good time at Wingnuts.
Are you, so what's your take on buffalo wings in general? You love wings?
Yeah, I've always. So when I went to school here, it was like perfect. It was always easy for me. So yeah.
Right. And what did you think of Wingnuts when we went there?
Best you can get, man. Best around.
Best you can get, dude. So the story of Anthony, remember this, Ryan? Like we were cleaning up. I don't think you were over there with us. We were talking to a couple Bills fans, and Anthony was kind of like hanging out. We were breaking down the setup, and as like, you know how it is, we get to eating the wings, and then we like got to start the show. So I usually get like 2 or 3 wings in before we start, and then I'll crush them after, right? So I got a single order, nothing crazy, right? I had maybe 1 or 2. Anthony had 1 or 2 before the show. And we're breaking it down, right? Like, and all of a sudden I'm talking to these fans, and I look back over at the plate, and all of a sudden, like before I know on, all the wings were gone. I'm like, what is going on here? Dude, Anthony just racked them, dude. Just put him down. He was hungry. Listen, yeah, I get it.
That's right.
I mean,
first
listen,
time,
hot, cold, it doesn't matter. Wingnuts wings, they're good. So
no, I know, but I wanted some still. And you just ate them.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, that was too bad. You took a while. So.
You'll have that.
All right, Ron, final thought before we get out of here.
Final thought. Can't wait to be back here tomorrow talking about some of these rookies that caught your eye, caught your attention. Glad the schedule's out. Glad that we're getting one day closer to meaningful football. Stick with us, Bills Mafia. Keep track with Shout, and then follow our work, nyup.com, syracuse.com.
Anthony DeChico, producer extraordinaire, Ryan Talbot. I'm